making our discussion difficult. Your laughter is somewhat irritating. You're gently required within the next 10 years to stop standing here drinking wine and making noise. And I said, well, you could do this quite recently. But now I'm saying, I don't know how to do this, but because we have this Diablo Włodarczyk, I will ask him, he's a nice guy, and I will tell him, you go back and you ask them to stop making noise, because otherwise you will just dump them in the lake. And what do you think? Which option would be heard better? And nobody in the room, everybody was in no doubt that the boxer is what you need to use. If you have this situation, you ask the boxer to go and bring back order. So the EU and this sector has to adjust its tools to the current situation, because if somebody is negotiating using baseball bats, you can't just ask them, well, hit me again because I like it. No, you can't do this. We can't teach them how they should behave because they don't really respect us much. So you have to control your game. Since we have a group of very smart people here, they have to define for their sector, which represents about 20% of our industry, and very many value chains start with the chemical industry. Well, we have to say how we can ensure the supply. When on the one hand we have a problem with the production for the chemical industry, which produces those chemical semi-products, or we have farmers who need fertilizers. So we have to define our play, and sometimes we have to use this boxer. If you don't have this boxer, then build a factory that produces ammunition, because you can't have this situation where this big Europe has ammunition only for 3 days of fighting, because even if there was only fighting for 4 days, and what will they do? They will have a conference in Brussels and they will be discussing. Well, even the European Parliament hasn't come up with such an idea. I think it's enough of this discussing. We need something specific. Okay, so let's ask specialists to come forward, and I will just go and relax.
Przed nami nowy model na pewno. Panie premierze, Jan Krzysztof Bielecki, bardzo dziękuję za rozmowę.
Jan Krzysztof Bielecki, former Prime Minister, thank you very much for this discussion.
Szanowni Państwo, to teraz porozmawiamy trochę z innej perspektywy.
Now let's talk about this promised land with different perspective. So we are rearranging the stage a little bit.
Zaproszę moich rozmówców. To spojrzenie chcemy, ja bym chciał kontynuować.
And I want to continue this perspective.
Obracając się trochę wokół tego głównego nurtu tematycznego, czyli bezpieczeństwa, konkurencyjności i przyszłości, spoglądając na to z perspektywy zarówno polskiej administracji, jak i administracji brukselskiej, zaproszę na scenę już o zajmowanie miejsc. Szanowni Państwo, od precedencji tak zapowiem jeszcze raz, chociaż już dzisiaj zapowiadam na dzień dobry. Pan Krzysztof Hetman, poseł do Parlamentu Europejskiego. Zapraszam. Pan poseł Dariusz Joński, również Parlament Europejski. Zapraszam. Pan Waldemar Sługocki, poseł na Sejm, wiceprzewodniczący Komisji Gospodarki i Rozwoju. Zapraszam. I właśnie jest z nami już pan Miłosz Motyka, wiceminister Ministerstwa Klimatu i Środowiska. Dzień dobry.
Widzi pan, panie premierze?
Can you see the Prime Minister? They only now brought the golden chair. So, ladies and gentlemen, we will try to either confirm or not this statement that the security starts with economy. The Prime Minister has said that we should have a different perspective, that it should start at a different place. But I will try to defend the chemical industry that is the heart, the backbone of everything. Even the political structures should look at it very thoroughly and care for it. So I will divert from the presidency and we'll talk with our local people, both Mr. Sugotsky, then the State Secretary in the Ministry of Development, and Mr. Motyka visited the Congress in Warsaw, Polish Chemistry, last year, and since that time we had the elections for the European Parliament. We have announced the manifesto of the Polish chemical industry. War in Ukraine is on all the time. The European Commission published the Draghi's report on competitiveness, and the next year, then the Trump won the election and started aggressive trade policy and many other things. So, what is your opinion, your assessment of this economic situation after this year? Are we a few steps more to rebuild the competitiveness, or from the perspective of the national administration? Well, this year showed us, ladies and gentlemen, how much can change. And last year, Congress, we were talking the few years, we planned the acts, the law, the legislation, our intents, and it turns out that one or two political decisions can turn everything upside down. And I think that, or I'm pretty sure that as we were sitting at that time and talking that we should bet on the industry, but the fact was that we restricted the production at the cost of different factors. Now we are going back to reindustrialization, and the European Union is aware of this, and what you have said, it also shows this. The sooner we regain this competitiveness, going incorporated into the Polish legislation, like the support for the energy-consuming industry, and we will receive the signals, the better. So, because now at this weight, at this scales, the Polish economy, when we have the priority, the climate objectives and the industry, well, we have no doubts about the climate objectives, but we will not reach it at this time, at this rate which will reduce our competitiveness and the economy. This is also related to the global situation, because it will cost us, otherwise it will cost us jobs and social protests and populism, which will not change the climate policy, for sure. Thank you very much for inviting me here. I'm really glad that I'm here with you, and I will reflect to the allegory by Mr. Bielecki, because I really liked it, but I would like to enrich it by a few components, because Mr. Bielecki said that we have written some regulations in Europe, but our opponent played different games, and they also had different attributes, which our football team did not have. So this is the worst thing, is that Europe, in this allegory, the EU, when they were writing this regulation, they did not obey it. They violated this legislation, and they even had their self-inflicted goals. So we have admitted large companies from the Chinese market which did not use neoliberal economy. They subsidized their industry, and that was their competitive edge against the European Union and the companies, the entities operating in the single market. market. But on the other hand, Europe also violated these regulations. And I understand the carbon leakage. So they transferred their businesses to China and did not reach any goals. First, they did not invest in production, they did not maintain jobs, and they closed down the tax bases. And they did not reach any climate objectives because the climate is not restricted to Europe. The climate is global, so Europe participated in destroying the climate. So the decision makers in Europe must really obey the rules, must decide either to we regulate, but we are consequent, we obey these rules, or we have no these rules. We don't make these rules. And we have problems in competitions with China at this level which we destroyed, but also at this level which we determined and which is, in my opinion, over-dimensioned, which are climate objectives. And these are the components which we must cope now. We have mentioned energy, the energy-consuming industry, and you mentioned that it was a priority, it should be done. But finally, during this year, we visited the European Commission in Brussels, and we pointed out our priorities: the security, energy supplies, at a cost of some objectives or intentions which were designed for a longer perspective. So that's why we prolonged the support in the capacity market, which is a very important directions and very important for the energy security of our country. You have seen the event in Spain, and this can happen anywhere. And the European Commission has changed their perspective. Yes, but I have this impression, actually this looks like this, that you certainly can see it from the Brussels levels. Yes, of course, this response is quite delayed, but the European Commission has just observed, yes, something is going on. And I mentioned about it, I talked about it last year when we showed this manifesto. Stop it. I do not use the baseball bat because I do not have it, but the energy-consuming industry in Europe said, hello, European Commission, wake up, because we are losing the market. And when we import more to Europe, we are giving away our security and our operation in this market. So this European or Brussels perspective, does it show that the attitude of the European Commission is changing? We can see that the attitude of the European Parliament is changing. Yes, good morning. I would like to welcome you, and I would like to thank the organizers of this Congress, and I would like to say that Krakow today is the arena of debates, because the first large aviation Congress is also held today in Krakow, in parallel to this chemical Congress. And I would like to say that, so really, thank you for this invitation. And I would like to say that the European Union is a group of states which negotiate and talk to each other and revise what they accepted before. So it's not just a single country and one president which can just sign an act like the guy beyond this, the ocean, on the other side of the ocean. So, but from this very beginning of this term of the European Parliament, security and economy are the most frequent spoken words. When we started our Polish presidency in the beginning of January, Mr. Tusk came to structure, and he said that restricting of CO2 in this formula restricts or limits Polish and European economy. And bluntly speaking, with these challenging objectives which were adopted a few years ago, when everybody was talking about the environment, because that was the climate at that time, but after the pandemic and after the war outbreak and this trade war in the States has changed. So we do not have a week where we meet various industries and we talk to them. We have discussed. So this adopting the ETS2, the directives which can enter into force in 2026, not being involved or no commitment in cheaper energy, cheaper electricity. This will make us not competitive, not only against China, but also India, the ceramics industry, the whole automotive industry. I am in the Transport Commission, so we have started this battle, and we managed to reduce the cost for 3 years in Europe for companies that produce combustion vehicles. Someone would say we do not have this industry, but we still have this automotive industry in Poland, and even more people work in the chemical industry. And I would like to say 3 things. First, ETS2. We have started in our group, and certainly Christoph will confirm, we have started a very serious discussions about either stop it or postpone it for a few years. We are not ready for this. We're not ready for ETS2. And I would like to say that during this debate, we have 2 countries which would lie because they have already implemented in their countries, and when we go to the left, we can see it. They already have it, but we, as during the last few years, I don't want to be too political, but during recent years we did not do much about cheaper energy. Well, there was the construction of Ostrołęka power plant, 2 billions of zloty were wasted. We would have huge coal boilers, but we did not develop renewables, no nuclear power plants, but this has been changing. We have this first location for a wind farm. We have this first location of a nuclear power plant. The change of act on wind power. So this all will allow us to catch up with Europe. And we look at the chemical industry. The first issue is energy. So first, energy ETS2, and we have started this discussion, and we represent the biggest political group in the European Parliament, and we would like within a few weeks, hopefully before the summer holidays, we would like to accept this our statement. So we want to be heard because we think that it is not realistic. It's too challenging. We like it, but it is too challenging, too difficult. And the other issue, and we can see it during all elections in Europe, all possible bans which are implemented in Europe are ineffective. It's better to encourage, to give carrots than a stick. So it's better to encourage people to use electric vehicles, not necessarily Chinese ones, which are 3 times cheaper than the other ones. But the ban causes a reaction, and we have more and more people who do not understand it all. And when we analyze the situation in the States, the election of Trump, it shows that it was oppositions against some bans and everything which was imposed. And we can see it. And I would like to say that we are a large delegation, and we do not want to waste this 5 years, but this is our tens of hours of convincing people, convincing other delegations like Belgians or Ireland, which is the best example. The Germans, they have already been prepared for this. They have seen these objectives which they had to reach at 2027, but nothing happened in Poland, or not much happened in Poland for the previous 8 years. So we know the costs which So we are really mobilized, and I think that in the next few weeks we will use to show a clear signal, because we are running out of time and we are beginning not to be competitive. As Europe is not competitive. This is a place for seniors, for people who would just like to get interests, but we still want to show that Europe is a place not only good to live in, but it is a place which invests, and Europe can give quite a lot. But we have really missed a few years. As an example of a ceramic industry, we propose to implement some directives which would stop this great Indian export, and their products are cheaper, but not really healthy. We listen to everybody, to all parties, and we want to solve these problems. And the third thing is simplification. Yes, this bureaucracy, which we had quite a lot at every level, this compass which appeared. We have a bigger expectation that was written there. The simplification is too slow, it should go faster. So these are three things: energy, ETS2, and simplifications. I want to say that the whole Polish delegation of the coalition and the PSL, we are disciplined, and this is our objective which we want to achieve in this term, and we want to announce it about the ETS, because this will give us the real competitiveness. It will not be any better when we just talk, but the Brussels representation have also different rules of the game, because they talk much longer. Well, in the European Parliament, we have just 60 seconds time limit, so let us talk longer in Poland. We don't have this. Gentlemen, we have lots of issues which we could address, but I think that this one is really important, that the European Commission listens to us, listens to the European Parliament, because you listen to us. You are our voice, and thank you for this. And is it really the case that the Commission listens better? Because we do not see it. So there are no specifics. We have expected something. We expected something more. But is it possible? Is there any chance that the European Commission wakes up? Can you influence them more so that they can see and feel the weight of these industries like the chemical industry? Well, they are changing. They have been changing. I can compare it because I've been in the European Parliament for 10 years, and I remember this idea of the Green Deal when it was introduced. And perhaps most of people have already forgotten. It was quite enthusiastically accepted many years ago, because it would not have been implemented unless the member states agreed and the parliament agreed. But the problem is that this idea was quite interesting and right, but the problem is that it was not really reasonable. There was no common sense as regards the time of achieving these objectives, the tools that were used for this, for the implementation of the Green Deal. But first of all, there was no reflections at the time when, as was mentioned at the beginning of the introduction, there was no reflection during the pandemics and the broken supply chains, then the war in Ukraine. There was no reflection, and that was the critical moment which we overslept. And at that time, this Green Deal should have been revised and changed. Now, this reflection is coming. It is too slow and it's too shallow at the side of the European Commission. But the reason for this is very simple. Apart from my political experience, I also have some bureaucratic experience. I do not have no functionaries, bureaucrats, which would like to admit that they were to their errors. We need to give them space. They will never say that they made errors, that they were mistaken, but we need to give them some space for new proposals. So the name was changed, yes, but we also have the omnibus, and we have the situation that, in fact, they started seeing the problems, and we need to say that they do not do as much and too fast to respond to these problems. But it is really important that here the European Parliament is at the avant-garde of this change, and especially here in Poland, it was presented this place. They are talking, discussing. I do not really know what they are doing, but in fact, the European Parliament is the motor for changes, the driving force for changes, and you can see when you come to Brussels, we organize various events in the Parliament, in the European Parliament, and the second issue, which is also very important, finally someone in this room got up and said, stop, we must change. Because this is as in life, everybody in this room were sitting and thought it was okay. Actually, they all, most of them knew that it was not okay, but there was no one brave person who would say, stop, we're going to into the wrong direction, we must change. And I'm really far from politics like Darek, but in fact, Poland was the first country which got up and said, no, it's not okay. But referring to what you have mentioned, well, I think that this starts talking. The European Commission is starting talking about it. And I will give some examples, for instance, related to the trade with Ukraine, which was a few months ago. It was not possible to go back to the same rules which were before the Russian aggression. We managed, but now we're going back to it. We managed to increase the tariffs for fertilizers from Ukraine. So this reflection is on. So this change is happening, but it is too slow. And I'm pretty sure that this change can happen only, and I must refer to what you have mentioned with to this what you were talking with the Prime Minister. It's not baseball bat and fists, but the arguments and the intellect and the strength of argument. Yes, we have it, and we can present our arguments, our strong arguments, and this gives some results. But there's also the tail side. During the last 21 years, ever since we've been in the EU, we've been told about the single market, the restricted, limited rules for supporting our own industry. That Brussels, we need to ask Brussels, and they must give us their consent. But it's not true. Germany, France, Sweden, they protect their critical industries, the strategic industries, and we must start doing this. And it has already started, because that was announced by the government, and it has started. We can have more national approach to protect our own industry, and it's good that it has started. And you will see it will bring us some results. And when we are talking about security, in my opinion, in my opinion, ladies and gentlemen, I can see that our colleagues, Mr. Sogotsky, Mr. Motyka, we don't hear it, but they complain that they have less time for speaking. But I would like to tell you, to mention that last year you were present here. I was not here, and Mr. Joński also was not there. So, we must catch up. So, my last sentence. We like each other. So our last sentence about security. If you're talking about the chemical industry, it's just one tip from me, one hint, maybe too offensive. In the EU, the philosophy of approach to the defense industry has changed. It is quite a different approach that was a few years ago. The money for defense industry. We will have lots of money for defense industry. We already have quite a lot of money, but there are changes even in the current budget, which is valid until the end of this year. But there will be changes in the policy of cohesion, and the chemical industry should be included in the defense industry, should get this money. This is the defense shield of the economy. Yes, of course it is, because security starts with the chemical industry. Can we start as the national administration, the Committee of the Development of Economy in the Parliament? Can we just say to the EU that the key industry, such as the industrial chemical industry, should be treated as the defense industry? Yes.
Yes, we can. What I like is that we're beginning at various levels, our representatives in the national parliament or the European Parliament, we as a circle are talking in one voice. So we're meeting and we're creating a real feedback loop. And let me start with what you said at the beginning and what you started with your discussion with Prime Minister Bielecki. Context is extremely important, and all the events that you have shown us on the time axis, and there was just a selection, they are sufficient to revise some of the policies of Europe, including the climate policy in the context of protecting industries, including the chemical industry. And paradoxically, this event is actually helping and is convincing us to hold this debate. This debate is very important, and what is also very important is that we're not trying, I'm not sure that I should be revealing this, but when moving over with Minister Hetman to the Ministry of Technology in 2020, I asked one of the technology specialists, because I used to represent the ministry at the conferences, and how often did the review occur? It used to be every Thursday, and now I asked, and he said, well, we don't have a review meeting at all. So this is a good proof of what the European policy used to look over the last 8 years and how we were supposed to prepare our positions to present them on the European forum. There was no mechanism at all. Now there was a completely different attitude of the Prime Minister and the Minister towards Brussels, very gentle, and completely different on the internal market, where it was discouraging our integration with the EU. And now the Ministry of Development, but also the head of the Commission for Deregulation, we're asking for your activity, we're waiting for specific solutions, and in cooperation with the government of Poland, we'll be happy to create regulations which will also inspire our representatives. So Mr. Hetman and Mr. Joński, our members of European Parliament, that they can present them. And it's very important that we should convince our colleagues within the different political fractions of people from other European countries, because this perspective is different. Because the view of our colleague from IPP from Spain is different than of a representative of Poland, because our economic problems and our level of threat caused by the war is completely different. So we need different arguments, we need to present those arguments and convince them that what we're talking about is realistic. But it's very difficult. Well, this time I will not be interrupted now. But if you're breaking in, then I will stay silent for a while. I will continue later. But we met to talk about the support for the energy-intensive industry. So I would like to hand over to you, and it's very important that we should stress both at the level of the European Council, and this is the role of the Prime Minister, and our Prime Minister Donald Tusk is clearly presenting our point of view. And I'm not sure whether you share this, but this cannot be kept separate from politics, and this has been confirmed that sometimes the central administration is not even bothered by the society, but we need the society to bother the central administration. The society should inspire the central administration, and this society, for me, also includes the chemical industry. So for the chemical industry to be able to operate in the single European market, and especially in Poland, we have to talk about this. Not only the manifesto that you presented a year ago, but also what we're discussing today. There is a whole range of instruments that the national state has, because what Minister Hetman said is very important. We don't have to look at the European Commission, European Parliament, European Council, the Council of the European Union. We can take our steps independently. The question is, can we afford this? If we if we look at pros and cons, will it be profitable? But in the longer term, it does. It will be profitable, and this is why I'm mentioning this. So we definitely need to work together, but we must also be aware that, because you were also talking about this in this Congress, in this context of security. So security without chemical industry, well, we had the pandemic. The active substance that we needed for liquids that were life-saving, well, we were dependent on China. We didn't have the active substance. So you don't even need a military war. You don't need arms and armaments. Well, Mr. Member of Parliament, could you add to this? So we can do something as the European Parliament, and I want to give you an example of the automotive industry. Well, we stopped penalizing them, and the European Parliament actually set a date for this year when we'll revise everything until 2035. So we want to have a revision of the 2035, because we don't have the infrastructure that we were supposed to for charging cars. People are not buying those cars as often. On top of that, Chinese cars have been imported, and they are quite effective in competing with European factories. The best example is the closure of the main, most important, largest factory building electric cars, which was Audi's factory near Brussels. That's one thing. But the second is that we are fortunate in the fact that the person who has the greatest authority in the European Union in Brussels is the Prime Minister of this government. This is extremely important, because without that we would not be successful. You know what it looked like for the last several years. And it was not easy to convince. Spain was mentioned here. It was not easy to convince them that we should suddenly spend a lot of money on armaments so that we would be able to protect our frontiers, from land, air, and sea. Well, because we are the border country, We have the Commissioner for Defense, who is from Lithuania. He also understands it. But the further you are from the Russian border, the fewer people understand. But this was successful. Everybody took the decision that we have to do this. Now the question is that Poland should benefit from this. So the SAFE program actually gives us this opportunity. In the Commission of Transport, I will be the shadow chairman, and I will be. I want to tell you that this is a program that we can benefit from as institutions and as companies, so that at the stage at which documents are drafted, we should be there already. So I would like the President to ask to participate, because we're starting in July. In September, we are supposed to have the last amendments, and by the end of the year, we're supposed to close this project. I'm pretty sure that Poland will be able to benefit from this, because we know that the European Union is betting on this, and in the new perspective, there will be a lot of money for this, and your sector can definitely benefit from this. Minister, you also mentioned, talking about ETS2, that there is a chance for changing the dates. So the Commissioner for Climate said, no way, 27, nothing can be changed. But this is an important role of the Ministry of Climate and Environment to fight for this. I took a questionnaire recently, and many people said 2035 would be the right year for postponing ETS2. Is this possible at all? Yes, there is a chance, and based on our manifesto and what we received, we analyzed ETS1, ETS2, and for example, the tax on internal combustion cars. So what was our surprise? You talked about this discussion in the Parliament and in the Commission. The Parliament, both either national or European, we're talking about bilateral discussions with the government, and they're saying, but you did agree to all of this. You accepted all of this. And I come back and I say, yeah, but the times have changed. But there are probably documents depicting how people were adopting those documents, maybe with some opinion difference, maybe with some proposal which stressed the Polish interest. No, there are no such documents. So this made it so difficult to approach this revision, which kept us awake for the last half of the year, because we had to redefine the national recovery and resilience plan, how we tried to abandon tax on internal combustion cars, but introducing incentives for green cars. So the Green Deal and this policy didn't just fall from the sky. Everybody agreed to this, and this is why it's so difficult to modify it by saying that times have changed. But in ETS1, even France is talking together with us about a corridor. But we know that times are hard now. Yes, but for those changed times, we are not prepared, and others were prepared for them, because now when we're talking about ETS2 and the European Green Deal, when this was being done, the European Commission assumed what would replace the then technologies. The FIR directive, how did we implement this? This was part of the European Green Deal, and then it turned out, well, we don't have it, we don't have the infrastructure. So the times have changed, but the Polish perspective is much more difficult because we haven't done our homework. But this has already happened. Now, the discussions about changing ETS1, for example, the corridor, you can't manipulate the system of allowance trading, which is supposed to protect the climate, but not become an instrument that you can make money on. And this is what France is saying, and we can build mechanisms in Europe that go across the policy, go against the interests of some region, because we're building various coalitions. In the ETS2, that is mainly our region, so it's the Czechs and partners from our region that we'll be discussing, and we're talking about this at the committee And what do we say to the European Commission? That if the burden on our transport, on households, will be that high, then I'm afraid this transport will stop playing its function, because there will be such a revolution in Europe, there will be such a new industrial revolution that we will have a structural change in the European Commission. So either we conduct those changes reasonably for the benefit of the environment, and we have done things well without speeding forward too much, or everybody will consider the European Union as something that is threatening the operation of companies in the industry. So this is what we're discussing. So something is changing here, and postponing this is one of our priorities. And here, fortunately, the Ministry of Climate is working on, the Ministry of Funds is working on this, the Ministry of Development and Technology is now sending those letters, because until now there was no strong emphasis at the international level for this revision to occur. At the end of our conversation, Minister, in the climate and EU policy, we are demanding many changes to be made now and quickly. So what has to change in the industrial policy of the EU so that it would stop being a burden, but it would actually protect the industries like chemical industry?
So I have no doubts about it. When we look at the loss of competitiveness, yes, it lost the competitiveness, but it's not the matter of the last 12 or 24 months. This erosion has been much earlier, even before the Green Deal, even before they started talking about it. So we agree with this. So I think we're on the same line. So it should work. Before they already started talking about the Green Deal, this erosion of the companies has started. Somebody had this idea in Europe that we will not have dirty, heavy industry in Europe. We will have clean air. We will produce the same somewhere else, but it will be cheaper and everybody will be happy. But it turns out that it does not work. So we must exert a pressure on the European Commission. We should build coalitions at the level of the member state and at the level of the European Parliament. And for example, Mr. Joński said that in our political group, the European when we raised the issue of ETS, that we said that it must be revised, that the ETS must be revised. So before, everybody was silent and did not talk about it, maybe informally, but not formally. But when we, as the Polish delegation, we said it's not possible, it can't be like this anymore, we cannot continue it. It turned out that we are supported by Spain, by Germany, by France. So we need to build wise coalitions. We should exert a pressure on the European Commission, because we're going back to the sources of the problem. It may seem not as relevant, but this is the fact. The bureaucrats would never admit that they made an error. We must exert pressure on them, both on the bureaucrats and the commissioners, the political presence, by the governments, by the industry, by individual industries, not only the chemical industry, because the cement industry, automotive industry and other must do it, and they do it. And we, as the European Parliament, must do it. And as I have given you some examples, these changes are possible because we have exerted such a pressure on the European Commission that they bent and they made some changes. And if I can give you some hints for this tariffs for fertilizers from Russia and Belarus, who did this good job in the Parliament, and the representative of European Commission listed us. These were not farmers. No, not farmers. Well, the farmers had their pressure 1.5 years ago, but in this case they were employees of nitrogen factories, representatives of trade unions. So with all due respect, when you speak in Brussels, you are very pragmatic, rational, you have arguments, you have numbers. You can prove everything with numbers, with figures, but they speak emotionally because they speak about their workplace, about their life, about their town, which depends only on this single factory. The sports events, the sports club, which they attend at Saturdays or Sundays, they know that will not happen. They will not have it unless when this factory does not exist. So they are full of emotions. They talk about their families, and these emotions really impressed the bureaucrats from the European Commission. So, if we, apart from the facts, evidence, numbers, if we add emotions to it, I believe that these changes will accelerate. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. As you can see, we still have quite a lot to do for security, for competitiveness, and I believe that we really will be able to rebuild and reinforce this industry, because there is no modern state without the chemical industry. So, thank you very much, Mr. Waldemar Sługowski, Mr. Krzysztof Hetman, Miłosz Motyka, and Dariusz Joński. And now we start the next panel. Sorry for exceeding the time, so I would like to invite the new moderator, and now we start the discussion with the participants of the next part. Ladies and gentlemen, let's continue the discussion, the strategic discussions. I would like to invite Ms. Katarzyna Byczkowska, the Managing Director of BASF Poland, Mr. Witold Literacki, the Vice President of ORLEN, and Mr. Artur Kucia from the PKOBP, responsible for the heavy industry. And my name is Marcin Jędrzejewski, Boston Consulting. I will have a pleasure to moderate this discussion, the discussions which I would like to focus on competitiveness and the future of the chemical industry in Poland and in Europe. Now we have a bit of time pressure, so probably we will get something from the coffee break, but we can manage. So my first question goes to Mr. Witold Literacki, who is co-responsible for ORLEN, our regional leader, which has both new chemical projects and potential takeovers, and they also close down their capacities. So my question is about the competitiveness of European chemical companies. European companies. Is there still a room for healthy business, healthy in European meaning, not in Chinese? So that's a good EBITDA on a secure leverage. So, ladies and gentlemen, I must say this: there is lots of going on about Brussels in the European Commission, lots of our efforts. And I must say about one thing. They mentioned the Green Deal. It was said that all states signed the Green Deal when it was implemented, but based on my experience, hardly anybody understood these regulations and the assumptions in those documents. And starting at that time with national level, functionaries or officials, but not everybody in Brussels understood the consequences, because nobody has calculated the cost of fuel when they implemented the cost of warm water in a tap and the cost of heating. Nobody has ever done it. And when we are approaching this time limits for implementing of those regulations, everybody understands what is related to it. But at that time, the whole package was accepted because the environment was in. There was fashion for environmental friendliness. And now they cannot really withdraw, because now it turned out that the world has changed. It has completely changed, and we do not know what will happen in 2 weeks, and anything can happen. Taiwan issue can start, and then the environment disappears, and we, as the European Union, we cannot adjust to the changes in the world. So, when we're talking about our competitiveness, the competitors against whom? The EU countries and EU businesses, or the world? As regards the world, we are backwards, we are behind, and we're not competitive. We know what are our problems in sales of petrochemical products. We sell fuels here in Poland, but other than that, the petrochemical products are very difficult to sell. We are talking about Anvil, our factory of artificial fertilizers. We know their problems. We know their challenges. So there is no competitiveness. In fact, we're not competitive. These companies are trying to survive. And you are representatives of these Polish factories. You want to survive. How can we sell it? We have discounts, bonuses, incentives, and so on and so on. You do it all. We too, so that you can place your products in the market. Because what is our choice? We can close down our factories. Everybody can do it, but what next? There's no alternative. What can we see? Can we see a room for something new? Yes, because we invest in startups, and we look for startups which we can support and develop them and earn money. We can see these possibilities in industries like pharmaceutical industry, for semi-products for pharmacy, because this far away in China. And now we have COVID, and what's then? Then we can see this possibility of circular economy, the reuse, recycling of plastics, which we can reuse in a good way. And we are trying to do it. The next issue are SMRs. Well, this is not something that any company can invest. We are aware of this, but as the champion which can do it, we will do it, so that we can use these opportunities. Will it give us a cheaper energy? Yes, it will. But these are enormous, gigantic investments, very expensive, similar as the investments in wind power. But it doesn't change the fact that unless we do it, we will not have energy security, and we will depend on somebody, whether from the west or from the east, but we will be dependent. So, to maintain our independence and the energy security, we must invest, and we do invest, whether these are renewable energy sources or not renewables. So let's go back to the chemical industry. Does Europe still need the chemical industry? What will be the demand for chemical products in Europe from the perspective of the global leader? Katarzyna. Thank you very much for this question. I think that we have already had this long discussion and various arguments were presented about the importance of the chemical industry. And I would not like to talk too long because we have heard that the chemical industry is a pillar of security and of the economy. And from my perspective, as a representative of the chemical industry, so the very fact that we have this clean industrial deal and that the chemical industry was recognized as an industry. So it shows that the chemical industry is just the beginning of everything, whether it's security, the defense industry, new technologies, electronics, construction, pharmaceuticals. So it's not possible without the chemical industry. So it is a rhetorical question whether Europe needs the chemical industry. We know it needs. And we can see that this difficult situation of this industry today, and the numbers just show it. In 2023, which was a very difficult year for the whole industry, and the industrial production drop was about 12%. In Germany, it was about 18%, so it was a very dramatic fall. And now I think that we all know that Europe needs the chemical industry, but we all are fighting for survival. We are not getting enough support. We have some support, and we hope that we will survive. Thank you very much. I would like to ask a question to Mr. Kucia. What is the perception of the chemical industry by the financial sector, by banks? Is there still this dormant situation which was mentioned by Mr. Bielecki 1 hour ago, or are you active? Thank you very much for this question, for inviting me to this Congress. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to oppose a bit, to polemize with Mr. Bielecki about this financial means, the deposits which are larger than the loans granted. But we're not waiting for more and more deposits because we want to give loans. And there was quite a lot said about the regulations, simplification, and because it is also a component which restricts business. And in the banking system, we have something which is called KHNF, the Commission of Financial Supervision, which is based on the EU regulations. And generally, during last years, we've been able to see various restrictions, which either restrict or disturb financing. And there's also a situation which is well, I don't want to talk about the chemical industry because it's not really uniform. There are some points where the situation is fairly good. There are some entities which have a good situation, good standing, and we give them financing. But there is quite a lot of businesses which have a difficult situation because we have heard that there are many problems faced by the chemical industry. So we have various means. We have money from the EU. We have funds for the defense industry, which will also go into the chemical industry. But when they go directly as the funds, probably for this most problematic businesses, they should go directly. But for other areas, when they can be supported by bank financing, I think that the banks will want to give this support. But it's not. It should not be the case that we just flood the market with the money, but this is the this function of banks as the creator of money should be accomplished, should be performed by the banks. So, as regards the chemical industry, there are points where we are involved and we provide the financing, but as a whole, as such, the industry, well, it's really difficult to treat this as a uniform entity. Thank you. Thank you very much. And in this difficult, traditional chemical industry, we are fighting for survival. We might survive or not. We still have some demand. There is still some demand. So, is there a real risk in this situation that the European chemical industry will stop producing but starts importing from more competitive directions? What would it mean for security? Are there any branches in the chemical industry which are strategic for Europe and Poland, which should not be lost? Yes, Mr. Litewacki, yes, I think that there is a risk that the cheap inflow of products from the whole world can flood us, and then our companies will not be competitive. This is the risk. But then there was a CBAN which was invented to protect this internal market. And I have many restrictions, many problems with these systems, and we should work about it, especially for fertilizers. But we must say there are 27 countries, and only a few of them want to protect this market. The other ones do not want; they oppose. So it's really difficult to get to reach an agreement. But we have also other products which are produced by chemical plants, and they also should get this protection. But when we are dependent on the import, we lose innovativeness, jobs, many thousands of jobs, people. We have good, well-educated people in this industry, in the production. So our community, our public is getting poorer. So the states have to pay the pensions and so on. So, but we have a few really specialist issues, products, which if they disappear, we are completely dependent on the external forces outside of the EU, and I can see these are agrochemicals, anytime pesticides, fertilizers. We're talking about the specialist chemical products for high-quality chemical products, raw materials like polypropylene, benzene, what is necessary to produce any type of plastic packages. And it all can come to us. If we let them come, they will come. But that will kill our business. So, in fact, truly, maybe we really should, the EU should start using some protectionist measures. We, as the EU, we should do it. Maybe also food safety and ammonia, for instance, and the fertilizers. Is it an example of an industry for which we should really fight to keep it in Europe? Yes, from the point of view of countries which do not have this business in their area, it is better to purchase cheap fertilizers from Russia, which will come and will be cheap. What is the quality of this product? It's a different story, but it does not change the fact that a farmer in France will have cheap fertilizers and they will be happy. But that it affects other parts of Europe where people lose jobs because we want to make some social group in a different country happy, but it doesn't mean that other social group does not suffer. We have an example of Ireland, which got rid of their own production capacities in fertilizers. They closed down the companies because the Russian stuff was cheaper. Then it turned out that the Russians increased their prices, so they lost their companies, and people had quite more expensive fertilizers. Thank you very much. And Witold mentioned CBAM as one of the mechanisms, one of the instruments which works to protect the European chemical industries. I would like to ask about the current or future planned regulations and European economic conditions. How do they allow the operation of European companies such as BASF? Katarzyna, what do you think? My reflection is that, well, I think that I'm pretty sad about it. When we look backwards, Europe is in a very bad geopolitical situation. This is really unfavorable for Europe because Europe has not been self-sufficient in energy for quite a long time. We have purchased energy, and the other continents like the US or China, they had surplus energy and they sold it. So we would purchase this energy. So by the time we had cheap Russian gas, there was some balance, and also the balance in prices. But of course, the war in Ukraine really disturbed this balance. And now, in the current today situation, the political situation and the regulatory situation is really pretty bad, unfavorable for this highly energy-consuming branch industry, which is the chemical industry. So, what's going on? What's being done for this? Well, we have heard today that everything is too slow, not enough, and not in the right direction. So we discussed this CBAMs and this new clean industrial deal. There's not a word about it, and the next protections. There's discussions about ETS and prolongation of the ETS. There are no specific answers for chemical companies in Europe. And another example, for instance, REACH. This is the directive which governs all chemical products in Europe, and this is the most restrictive legal act in the world. So an investor which would like to invest, they would go to a different place where they can do it more faster. For instance, registration of a new product in Europe, it takes up to 10 years, and in the States it's a much shorter process where it is worth doing. This is a question. So even the registration of a product, it's really a very difficult process. So this is the room for the legislators to improve. There's a room for improvement for legislation. So I still have some hopes, and even though I'm really scared and sad. So there's lot to do also for this basic, not necessarily green aspects, like for instance this cost of compliance, which you have mentioned, all issues related to, for instance, registration or formal requirements to sell the chemical products. Is it also similar, Witold, based on your experience, or are there any additional issues which should be fixed when we talk about the chemical industry? There are no basic issues. Each component has its consequences. And you all know, this is a provision in a legal act, causes that the market will go either to the left or to the right, or something will fall down, or something will get up. So when we're talking about that we can change something, it's not easy or simple. We have many regulations which should be changed. First is ETS2, which should be stopped and thrown into the bin. But if we manage to postpone it for a few years, it will be a great success of our presidency and our parliament, members of parliament. RED 3 is another issue. The number that a fuel should contain a certain percentage of biofuel. So in 29 we should have 29% of biofuels in the fuel, but to meet this requirement, we need to build installations and new plants. We build these plants, but we do not have inputs for this. We do not have charged materials to fill this 29%. So, what is Europe doing? Okay, let's get this post-frying oil from China. So, we're either talking about the energy, green energy, and we want to import waste from China so they can have even a better situation. So these are the issues which we point out, we show, we tell about it in Brussels. We want to change. And the next issue is the end of the stage of the free ETS certificates. So can we do it? So we should make it even more expensive. So the production of energy, of our production, should be even more expensive. The world is changing, and our officials are staying in the same place. So in our country, everybody understands it. When we talk about our ministries, they understand us and they know it. But in Brussels, sorry, not. But I have some concept which is related to it, because I take part in various organizations, and the people who are stopping it, these are the large global concerns, not the European concerns. They are global concerns which have no interest in any changes, because they don't want competitors. What do? They certainly have some part of production here in the European Union or not, or maybe just they sell it here. They have their distribution networks, their wholesalers, their retail sales. But when I talk to them, and I try to tell them, well, be more committed, be involved. When I'm talking about with the representatives of this large concern, they say, okay, let's move to the next point in the next item in the agenda. So they have no interest to support the change. Thank you very much. And just last 2 minutes. So finally, maybe there is a final idea, the final reflection. What should happen to help survive, to help this chemical industry to survive, or how can we help it? So the final ideas of our panelists. So I will start with others. To get more money available. So first of all, the declared money should be made available. And the second issue is when we're talking about the chemical industry. If we are going to treat it as a strategic industry, similar as the defense industry, we should put more pressure on the fact that the country should give guarantees for this state, and it should be allowed public aid. And we should have large investment programs in the chemical industry, in the defense industry. And the defense industry really requires large investment outlays, and these are billions of money which could go first to the defense industry, but also to the chemical industry, and it should be available, and the state should give some security. So some bank guarantees, bonds, to help the banks. Maybe 20–30% should be from them and theirs from the banks, but it should be secured by the state. So this is one bottleneck, and the second bottleneck is that because we have quite a large investment program, this industrialization of Poland is a large program. It is both in the wind power, in nuclear power, power industry, CPK, and the defense industry. So we are in the situation when we order everything, we will not be able to buy it because it will not be available in the market, because Europe is de-industrialized, so it will be difficult to buy it. But these are the bottlenecks, and we must do it. Thank you very much. And the final reflection from Katarzyna. Thank you very much. Very shortly, I have just three short issues. First, it's the simplification of REACH, which I hope, then the revision of CBAM. I also have some hopes that it will happen. And the third is the ETS, this is the compensations of costs in the ETS and postponing ETS 2. And Witold, and your final conclusion? Well, actually, everything has been said, but maybe a bit of optimism, because we have been complaining all the time. We've been complaining, it's a difficult time, but we should have a look at the good side, because we are about to start understanding the national market, the national client, customer, and the national supplier are the best, the most relevant, because we should learn from the others how to protect our markets. So the initiative about the local content in the purchase, it should be working for the development of everything, because we invest in between 36 and 38 billion zloty every year in investments. But why shouldn't it be done by Polish companies? Because it may not be possible when we build a gas power plant, CCGT. Well, we have to import turbines because we do not build them. But if we need steel, construction products, chemical products, why don't we get it from Poland? And I'm responsible for purchasing, for procurement in my company. And I would purchase first from the Polish company, from the EU companies, because it's important. We are in some regulatory situation, but French and German companies managed to cope with it, because their technical specifications were so strict that only the companies could meet these requirements. So it is as simple as that. So we would use our resources, our national Polish resources. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for this accelerated panel in our morning strategic debate. And I would like to thank Ms. Katarzyna Byczkowska from BASF, Mr. Witold Literacki of Orlen, and Mr. Artur Kucia of PKO BP. And my name is Marcin Jędrzejewski. Thank you very much.